Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream. We're delighted you're able to join us today. We are thrilled to be hosting Michael and Natalie McManus to talk all about Tribal. Yay! So, for those of you who may not know who I am, my name is Diana Santos. I'm the owner and lead instructor of Pet Dog U, and we are delighted to be hosting such wonderful instructors as Michael and Natalie to talk about this great activity that you may have heard of. Be like, there's something to do with fitness balls and pushing and things. I don't know. They're going to tell us all about it. So, guys, do you just want to do a quick introduction for the both of you so that our audience can have a little bit better understanding about who the both of you are?
Sure. You want to take it off?
Sure. We've been involved with Tribal since the American Tribal Association brought it over from Europe. And they had their first instructor certification week that Michael attended in 2011. Besides that, we do lots of nose work, some other sports, some behavior stuff. But Tribal is one that we've always wanted more people to be involved in and excited about because it's a very fun sport. There seems to be some barriers for entry for some people. So we're very thrilled that Diana wanted to talk about that today.
Perfect. And so, can you just give a better definition of what tribal is? Because I know I've described it over the years, and people are like, huh?
Yeah.
So, could you maybe let them know what this whole thing is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people get the idea that tri-ball has something to do with it being three balls. And I understand that misinterpretation because the word tri is a prefix that normally like tricycle is three wheels, But actually, tribe is German for push. And so the name actually means push ball. And it started in Germany or the Netherlands. Yeah, it's Germany by a Dutch trainer. And it started not with exercise balls, but with those big barrels that are often used in ranch work. And the dogs would push them around the ranch, and he trained the dogs to do that as an activity. And later, because exercise balls are more available to people, that kind of got switched over there. But basically, what it is the teaching of the dog the directional control of an object like an exercise ball so that they can move it around a field, bring it to you, put it in a goal, whatever you might want to do with it. And it requires a lot of distance control and interaction between you and your dog. It's a lot of fun. And I don't think there's any sport quite like it in that sense. I mean, the closest thing would be herding, even though it's not really like herding at all.
So, for people who may say, okay, but can my dog do this? Because it sounds as though this is for dogs that, are the pointed-eared, or they're the ones slinking around and they're chasing the sheep.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
are there
no,
all dogs that can do this?
yeah, we've had every kind of dog in our classes doing this. I mean, we've had little Jack Russell Terriers,
Akitas.
Akitas. Yeah, my dog was a Siberian Husky who I started with doing this, and um, I'm trying to remember now. In that first certification program, who was there? There were a couple border collies. There was a kind of like a Malinois Tavern looking. It was a Belgian dog, but I don't think it was from Europe, so I don't think it fit neatly into the little breeds that we have in the United States. And I think there was a Labrador. I think there was just a random mixed breed, and then there was my Husky. So it definitely initially attracted a lot of herding people, a lot of herding dogs. But any dog can do this. Any dog. In fact, I wish I could find the video. I thought I took a video of it. I trained my guinea pig to do it. My guinea pig would push a ball to me on a little table, and that was a lot of fun.
That is adorable. So, could you talk about a little bit why someone, because now we are kind of in a renaissance as far as things to do with our dogs, right? People are like, oh, now I have to learn about something else.
Yeah.
What are some of the benefits of people doing tribal with their dogs?
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits. I think that, and this is probably one of the biggest complaints I get from people when I introduce them to tribal is like, oh, I have so many dog sports, not another one, right? And I get that. I think what tribal gives you is an opportunity to work on distance. Like some people do distance work in agility very well, but if you don't like running as much, then Tribal, the dog does more of the work for us. That doesn't mean you can't get out there and move with your dog if you like moving with them, but it's going to give you that ability to build those communication skills that allow you to direct your dog around. And for me, it's about the communication, that higher order of the dog being out there, not right here at my side, but being out there and looking at me and wondering what to do, and us talking back and forth. I think that's probably the best thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot of problem solving in how to communicate with the dog, how to get the idea across to them that we've decided we want to do in terms of where we want the ball to go and end up. And I think a lot of people don't, besides nose work, a lot of sports don't do so much in terms of we have got a goal to accomplish together, and we both have to be partners in getting this job done.
Yeah. One more thing I want to add onto that is that the actual, like, it's not exactly confidence, but it's like something to do with when the dog pushes the ball and moves the ball and controls that ball. There's not a lot of other sports where the dog directly interacts with the environment and controls that part of the environment. And that's very different when you're asking the dog to do it like that, instead of just like jump over a jump. But like, what if it was actually like knock that jump over intentionally, right? That would be a whole different thing. And it gives the dog a sense of empowerment that I think is kind of cool.
That's a way in which it's more like sheep herding than
or even protection sport where the dog is actually interacting with the decoy or something. It's like there's going to be a response, and they have to, it's cool. Yeah.
So I think that's a really important thing to point out, because again, the ball almost becomes alive as soon as it starts to move, and then you're trying to get that ball to a specific spot. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know when I dabbled with this, when I first started training, it was a journey.
Yeah.
And that was before I met either of you, and I made all kinds of mistakes. So can you talk about some of those things, as far as, the power of having the dog understand how they can interact with the ball, but all the variables of the ball itself, and some of the pitfalls that people may fall into when they're doing training?
Well, Michael, I think, fell into quite a few of those pitfalls when we first heard about it. As soon as he heard about it, okay, let's start training. And so, we created overfixation on the ball initially. And so there were a lot of things that we, and especially Michael, had to work through to iron it out for clarity for the dog and less destructiveness, not having to buy new balls all the time because the dog popped them.
Yeah, I think once I really got into my mind that tri-ball wasn't about pushing balls, but about controlling the ball and teaching the dog to also control their desire to push the ball, one of the things that you'll discover is once you teach the dog to push, it's the only thing they want to do. And you're going to spend basically the rest of your training. No, not yet. Wait, not that hard. Slower. The wrong direction. You're going to be mostly fighting and haggling with your dog over how, when, and where to push the ball. And you start to understand it's all about the controlled movement. It's the difference between lure coursing and herding. Herding, the dog has to chase the sheep with a direction and with a purpose. And lure coursing, the dog just has to chase. That's it. And tri-ball is about control. And and so that's yes, they do get to push the ball, and that's a lot of fun. And it's easy to teach. It's actually very easy to teach. I think a lot of people think that it's going to take a year and all these shaping skills, and shaping skills don't hurt, but it's not hard to teach. It's fun. It's simple to teach. You can take a dog up to competition training in a month easily. Like for the average pet person, we just did several of our dogs were going through the training, and I think Minnow and Catfish and Icy, they all got to a competition level in 2 weeks. Now that's us training them. Our students take longer, and it's based on how frequently they practice and how good quality the practice is. But I would say it's not unreasonable to think you could be competing in 1 to 3 months.
Perfect. And then people are like, oh, but wait a minute, I don't have a field, Michael. So what do people do when they're actually training? They're like, I have maybe a backyard.
Well, I think that was one of the things that was shown to people originally in how the competition structures were envisioned originally, that looked like you needed huge spaces because the balls needed to be this large distance away from the goal. And so there's been a lot of work around that from a variety of organizations, including ours.
I think they were trying
accessible.
to make people think it was more like herding than it was. And so they wanted to show these big open ranch type settings and barns and things like that. And no, you don't need any of that to teach tri-ball. And one of the things that we've tried to do with our organization is make it more available, more accessible to people. You don't need as much space. You don't need as many exercise balls. Like people have the image of kind of the first competitions we saw in America were like 15 balls out there, way out there, and the dogs had to bring all of them in. It was actually kind of, in some ways, boring for a lot of dogs, especially not the border collies. Like the border collies would do that all day long. But my husky was like, after 3 balls, they're like, yeah, that was fun. I'm going to go take a nap now. So we want fewer balls. We want shorter distances. We want more complexity, more challenge to the handler and the dog communicating, not just go out and push a ball, but go out and push a ball slowly in the right direction, the right ball. And we find that adding that layer of complexity makes it a lot more fun for the dogs and doesn't increase your need for space or equipment.
Yeah, a lot can be done in a living room or a small backyard or a small training facility. We used to teach out of a quite small training facility in California, and there's a ton you can get done. It doesn't mean that the location for a competition might be a little bigger, but if the dog has all those skills, they can still rise to the occasion.
Perfect. And so when you're talking about the control of the ball, does that mean that it's important about the dog's orientation to the ball? Because I know that when I was playing with this, like the dog would be pointed like kind of off center and they would push the ball because again, I wasn't following any,
Sure.
organized training. We were just like, push it.
Yeah.
And then the dog would go one direction and the ball would go flying in another direction. And the two of us are like, well, now what?
Yeah.
So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and maybe at this point, it's not a bad idea to show some videos of what we're talking about. But let me describe the skills really quickly, and then I'll kind of direct you to which videos. One thing that would be valuable to say here on the outset is that we, in our training and our organization, we use weighted balls. Some people use unweighted balls, but I'm sure you probably, but by your description, use unweighted balls, which you sneeze on them and they go 10 miles away. So it's much harder for the dog to get a sense of control of that ball. And it's a lot easier to accidentally tap into the dog's chase drive, which we're not trying to do as much in tri-ball because what comes after chase is biting, and that causes all sorts of issues. So we break down tri-ball into 3 basic skills. There is balancing, which is a term that we borrowed from herding, which is the orientation opposite of the ball, so that if the dog were to push the ball would come to us. Then there's going out to the ball, sending out and around the ball. That's a skill that you use in a lot of dog sports. So most people who've done other dog sports already have the skill, and we just make a few minor adjustments to the topography of it, how it's shaped, how it looks, the speed of it, things like that. And then the last one is pushing. So if you want to pull up the Minnow balance video,
Sure.
This is one of the first. So in our organization, there are 3 tests that you have to do before trialing. And this is the first test. It's a balance test. We want to see that the dog is able to orient properly to the handler without pushing the ball. If the dog pushes the ball in this test, they fail. So we usually recommend our students pass this test before ever teaching the dog to push, because that only adds conflict. There are 2 balls out there. There's a line painted on the ground, actually a circle around those balls. You guys can't see that circle. It's painted on the ground. I'm not allowed to cross that line. This is a bigger field than is necessary, but it's just what we have available to us. So don't think you need this huge field to do it. The dog needs to go and balance around one of the balls. I'm doing some warming up with the dog. You're allowed to reinforce in competition, so I'm giving her food.
As long as you're outside of the
Yes,
ring of
don't
play.
throw it in the ring and distract the other dogs. So she needs to stay there, and the judge is counting down from 3. And from here, I'm going to send to the other ball. The dog needs to orient towards me. And I've passed my balance test.
That's awesome.
And she's not a pointy-eared herding dog.
Right.
So from there, I think let's go ahead and look at the push test, also minnows. So minnow push. And this is the second test. And what I want to see is that the dog can push the ball to you about 10 feet.
So is that the minnow course?
Minnow push. It should be the last one in the folder, I think.
We our first tribal thing. Come on, Santos, you can do it.
Maybe it didn't go through somehow.
Okay, hang on. Yep. I'll get it. So you can talk for a second.
Yeah, sure. So this is right after you teach balancing, we teach pushing. And then if you can just pull up the course if you can't find push.
Yep, I got push.
There we go.
Yeah.
And these, again, this is minnow training. It's about 16, 17 lessons of nose work. Each lesson was
Tribal.
5. So, yeah, sorry, did I say nose work?
Yeah.
I'm in nose work mind right now. So each lesson took about 5 to 20 minutes. And, that's about 2 weeks of training if you're doing homework on your own. By the way, the videos of all of her training are available for free in our Facebook group.
RSG Tribal.
There.
Okay, so she has to balance because she's not allowed to push it anywhere. She has to push it between those 2 white posts. You can see those 2 white posts are very wide. We don't expect absolute precision, but we do expect the ball to go generally the right direction.
Bless you.
Okay.
And now let's look at the course test. This is all 3 tests. Once you do this, you can start playing all the different games we have. In this test, we're testing the dog's ability to control the movement of the ball even further. They have to now do a figure 8 with the ball between those 2 poles.
Ball leaves the ring. There. Push.
And you're not allowed to let the ball hit you because we don't want to see anybody trying to help steer the ball for the dog. The dog should be doing all of the control of the ball. And you can see she's pushing it the wrong way there. It's totally normal for young dogs to do that. They get real excited. Nothing wrong with that. She's young. She's undisciplined in her pushing. She pushes really hard, and I'm trying to train her to push softer. So you're seeing a dog at a kind of a beginner level of training. A dog at a higher level of training would obviously show a lot more restraint.
He's about, I think, 1.5 years here.
Yes, full of energy. Yeah.
Good. Push.
Yep. And then from there, so she passed her test. From here, you got a whole bunch of games that you can play. It's a lot of fun. And all of these things can be taught in your living room or at the park on a long line. If you need a little bit more space. But yeah, it's you don't need a lot of space to do any of this stuff.
So for people who are watching this, like, okay, this is really interesting and fun, but how on earth do I get to the point where the dog would be able to do this? Would you ever get to a point where the person is staying inside of the actual hula hoop in their handler station and the dog is doing a figure 8? Or is the dog still bringing the ball towards the handler as the handler is walking through the stations?
Yeah, I mean, once you get past the kind of intermediate level of tri-ball, where we're teaching the dog how to overcome all of these obstacles, how to get a ball out of a corner, how to chase down and stop a runaway ball. There's all these sorts of exercises that we do. Once you're past that, the sky's the limit. So if you want the dog to do figure 8 with a ball around the cones independently without the handler, you can train that. It's not a requirement for anything that I have. There are some venues that are playing with those skills more.
And we've talked about at an advanced level having the dog pushing the ball directly away from the handler, which is definitely a more advanced skill.
And I find also that teams with good communication, which this sport really does build really good communication between you and your dog, have been able to get themselves out of a pinch in certain of the games we play by being able to tell the dog to push from the wrong, quote unquote, wrong angle. They're like, I know this feels wrong, dog, but just push it. Trust me. And the dog goes, okay, I'll push it. And then if they can communicate well, then they get it done. So there's a lot of ways to play.
For when people are starting with this, is it a set place that the dog is being trained to push the ball to? Or basically there's a target that the dog would be pushing towards, so the dog is figuring out how to orient themselves to the ball? Or is the handler actually telling them, okay, no, you need to move a little bit more to the side, you need to go to this direction? Does that make sense? Yeah. Is the dog the one making the decisions, or is it the handler, or is it a combination of the two?
Yes, it's a combination. So the target that the dog is orienting towards is the handler. And so if you've ever taught a front position for obedience, you know that you can move around. The dog can maintain that front position and find it no matter where you're standing or what direction you're facing. That's kind of what we do in Tri-Ball. There's a couple differences. One, we don't want the dog super tight to us because obviously there's a ball between us and the dog.
Will be.
Yeah, there will be at some point. But even in the beginning stages, when we're not even using a ball yet, we want the dog to be a little farther from us. And also, we want the dog to be able to do it without being verbally signaled, so that the dog is offering that automatically. Because eventually, when the dog's pushing the ball towards us from a long distance, that the ball's going to hit a clump of grass, a breeze is going to pick up, and it's going to move that ball offline. We want the dog to automatically adjust without any need of communication from the handler. That said, the handler can communicate. We do have the words and body language that we can tell the dog shift left, shift right, do all these things, stop, go. We have all those signals, but most of the dogs learn to automatically adjust to the handler's line, which is pretty cool to see when they make that connection.
And then we teach them, as we introduce pushing and beyond, that the goal is basically to hit your knees, essentially, with that ball.
Yeah.
So we don't want the dog stopping 10 feet from you and going, good enough.
Yeah.
So they pretty quickly learn, okay, I want to get the ball to my handler.
Which you can see she hit me in the knees with the ball several times.
Yeah.
And she's like, tag, I got you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So for people who may be interested in this, you actually provide a Tri-Ball program through Pet Dog U. Can you just talk about those 3 courses as far as the progression for those?
Absolutely. So the 3 courses follow basic, introduce to you all of the basic skills in essentially the order I teach them. The first course, you're going to learn basically teaching the dog how to orient to you, how to go out and around the ball, and that's, and also some like prerequisites, what you need before doing Tri-Ball and that kind of stuff. That's everything that's covered in that first course. The second course, we start talking about multiple balls, how to direct the dog back and forth between balls, and setting them up to be ready to learn how to push. Usually I don't teach dogs to push until they can do at a minimum what you guys saw on the balance test earlier. They need to be able to go out and balance between 2 different balls. You need to be able to direct them left and right and that kind of thing. And then the last course is all about teaching the dog how to push and how to control the push and make sure the dog isn't pushing before you tell them to. It's a very simple program. It's not really meant, and I've been thinking about restructuring the course a little bit and talking about how to add the videos I have training Minnow from nothing to competition to those courses so that people have them as a reference there. Sure. But it's not meant to be purely progressive, but a toolkit of tools that you should have, and you understand, like, don't teach pushing before you've achieved this level of skill. But you can kind of jump around a little bit, and then at the end of that, you have all the skills you need to compete.
Perfect. And then as far as this having different tools inside your toolbox, would you revisit balancing as an example throughout the whole time that you're doing Tri-Ball in order to really make certain that that's solid? Or once the dog is pushing, is now balancing, like, oh, we don't need to do that anymore?
Yeah. No, I mean, like, our most advanced students come to class and that's what we're working on. And we might work on that within a context of an advanced skill. Like, okay, we're going to get this ball over some kind of obstacle, which is really advanced that you can't do until you have those skills. But then we're finding, hey, the dog doesn't want to balance properly. And so we're going back to the beginning exercises and doing them in that new context to proof them.
And most practices with the dog start with maybe 2 to 4 minutes of warm up without the ball, what we call balancing on the flat, where you're just reminding the dog and making sure that they're tuned up and straight and, not like thinking about heeling and way off on your left side instead of straight in front of you, or, whatever ideas may have gotten in their head from other activities that you're doing with them.
Perfect. And it's a good thing for people to keep in mind is that, again, like you mentioned before, you're kind of battling against the dog, like, oh, I really want to push this ball now.
Oh, yeah.
and you're looking for more precise behaviors. So being able to really emphasize and the balance thing really, when I first was speaking with you about this program that you had put together, the balance thing was just so brilliant. I was like, oh, well, that would have solved a whole lot of issues I was having in the beginning is if we just had that.
Yeah, and you can absolutely, if you've already done it where your dog just wants to push every time they see a ball, you can go back and fix that. It's very similar to you doing nose work and your dog starts scratching at odor. We can go back and fix that. Better not to create the problem. Way better not to create the problem, but you can go back and fix it. You've not ruined anything.
And a lot of people come to us saying, my dog has been chasing and popping balls their whole life. I don't think I can do tri-ball because I'm going to owe you, $60 every class from popped balls. And we always assure them that the way we start really focuses on de-emphasizing the ball.
Yeah.
So it's very much about the balancing, because once the dog learns the balancing with just the person, then we put the ball in between, but they're still not interacting with the ball. They're focused on balancing to the person. And then we focus on those send arounds like Michael was talking about. So they're having to run around the balls, but they're not interacting with the balls. They're focused on getting back to you. And so we have been able to train tri-ball with some, really practiced ball murderers. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and it really is just a matter of training. If you thought about it differently, and we've done this with our dogs. So you have a tennis ball, the dog wants to bite it, and they've been taught to bite it for years and years and years. How hard would it be to teach a new game of here's a tennis ball on the ground, and I want you to push it with your nose and roll it over towards me? I mean, most of us could teach that in an afternoon, and that doesn't mean that the dog's not allowed to chase and bite it later at another time. But if we teach them, this is the game we're playing right now, don't bite it, just nudge it with your nose and roll it to me, nose target it, it wouldn't take that hard to teach. And then we just make that very contextual.
And other dogs have done a lot of actual exercises on exercise balls, putting their feet
jumping
up
on
for
them.
fitness. And so, that is addressed the same way, that we just focus on recontextualizing, de-emphasizing the ball. That's not the game we're playing right now. And they can definitely get it.
Perfect. And can you also talk about some of the added benefits of tri-ball? You were talking a little bit about the relationship, but as far as being able to emphasize the communication between the dog and the handler, and even as far as the handler understanding how they could potentially motivate the dog, where when you're working on the balancing, some dogs would be like, wait a minute, what is this? I'm not so sure. I'm going to go sniff and go somewhere else. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. In our training program, there's a big emphasis on engagement. I start most of my dogs off leash. And yeah, the dogs are distracted. And I think in a way, this isn't special to tri-ball. In a way, this is just, I think good dog trainers start by getting the dog on their team. And, it's great to see in the dog sport world such an emphasis now on engagement. But on the flip side of that coin, the sad part is that it's needed because so few people do have true engagement with their dogs sometimes that they need that extra help. So this was one of the sports where I really first started getting my students to get engagement with their dogs and get their dog to come to training, ready to be trained, asking to be trained, and with them, and understanding how to have the right kinds of treats and the right kinds of toys and the right kind of interaction, and not just boring your dogs or losing them.
Yeah, we do lots of treat throwing, which adds a lot of fun and movement for a lot of dogs. And there's definitely, we want there to be a lot of fun to it for both the dog and the handler, that it's not, you're not doing this rote obedience. Even though we're talking about communication and control, that doesn't mean that it's the same every time. It doesn't mean that we're not having a huge amount of fun with it.
Perfect. So did you want to talk a little bit about the competition organization that you both started, Push Tri-ball?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I wanted to make tri-ball a little bit more accessible to people, make sure they understood that they didn't need a degree in animal behavior to teach it, that they didn't need a farm to put on competitions, that you could do this in a small space, that, any kind of space that we'd use for almost any other dog activity. If you run a CGC test in a space, you could probably use that same space to do a tri-ball competition. And And that you can train a dog. I wanted a sport venue. Like, I think a lot of people got demotivated early on because it took so long to train everything you needed to get to the advanced level, or to the competition level. But I want you guys to know that you can teach, you can go and compete. You can do those tests that I just showed you in 1 to 3 months. You just have to you just have to be a little dedicated to training. As dedicated as you would be to any sport, 5-10 minutes a day every day for a month, and you'll be there. It's not going to be a huge investment. So the organization is broken into 2 types of activities: those tests that I showed you, and then games. And the games can be anywhere from one of the games called speed bowling, where we put a bunch of bowling pins down and the dog has to knock over as many of them as possible with the ball. So that they have to roll the ball into the bowling pins, knock them all over. And then the dog who can knock over the most within 1 minute, because again, we're not trying to lose the dog's focus and do 20-minute runs, which is what they originally were. I want runs that are the same as agility, 30 seconds to a couple minutes, like nice, clean, get in there, get out, have fun.
That's part of keeping it, high energy,
Yes.
exciting, fun. We don't want the dog or the handler getting burnt out on a run, although there is a lot of mental
yeah.
work to it. And so it is tiring.
Yes.
The dogs definitely, people often, when they first start competing in Tri-Ball, they want to just sign up for absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And then they get, halfway through the competition, like, oh my gosh, we're both really tired. So it's more than people might think in terms of mentally and physically satiating.
Yeah. I also wanted to have a venue where you were allowed to reinforce the dog in the ring. I think the era of going into the ring without anything is kind of coming to an end. I think generally that's a good thing. There are some downsides to it as well, but generally it's a good thing. And I wanted people to know, like I want you to go out there engaging with your dog, but I want you to keep the dog, motivated and give them reinforcers. This is something that ironically always existed in the working world. Like if you do herding, the dog always got sheep in the ring. If you do hunting, the dog always got ducks in the ring. If you do protection sport, the dog always got to bite someone in the ring. And it was only like, obedience where we expect them to do it for no reason. So yeah, I wanted to keep that going. Now, a lot of dogs don't need it because the pushing of the ball in itself becomes a very, very strong reinforcer. But yeah, so that was one of the things that I wanted people to be able to do.
And also with the 3 tests, we wanted people to be able to perfect those foundational concepts that we want them to learn: the balance, the send around, the pushing, and what was the other one? I feel like I'm missing something.
Well, yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, what is it?
No, that's all.
I brought it up. Okay, and so to not get nothing for all the work they've put into those, and also to feel like they're really worthwhile, because they are.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna not do very well in the more complicated games if you don't have those well practiced and then well maintained. Because if you just do them to pass a test, then you're gonna lose them, of course. And so, yeah, we wanted people to know how important we think those foundational concepts are, that they're worth, a ribbon.
And that's a really thoughtful way of putting together an organization. I commend you both for thinking about that. It's combining your experience as instructors and what you've seen within the sport, and then putting together this organization in such a thoughtful way. So thank you. Because it's basically avoiding a whole lot of problems. I think it's brilliant to be able to allow for there to be that reward, and that they're very well, like you mentioned, Michael, there may be dogs that are like, the push is the reward, I'm good. But the fact that they could notice the dog do something, make a decision, and then be able to reward them, that's amazing. I mean, just think of, again, obedience, rally, maybe even agility. If we could actually reward the dogs in a way that they would appreciate as they were making a decision, I think we would see some better performances.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all the best dogs in every sport, obedience, rally, agility, they all find a way to make those behaviors self-reinforcing, and that's great. But some of those dogs don't make it that far, and I think it's because they throw them into a ring too early. Agility is a little bit easier because running and jumping is so self-reinforcing for a lot of dogs. But then we all know those dogs that go and start to become self-employed and just run around the course, do the tunnel 10 times in a row, and then say, okay, I'm done. I want to go back to my crate. So yeah, allowing people to keep those treats in the ring allows you to bridge that gap without feeling the pressure of, I need to get treats off of me. And so many people are so like, I have to get treats off of me now. It's like, why? So, and I'm not even disagreeing. Like, yes, maybe we should get treats off of you and not let them become a crutch, but let's not be so obsessed with it. Let's not get fixated, because you're just as fixated on it as you think your dog is going to be fixated on
it. That's a very good point. So for people who may have a toy dog, are they also able to bring toys into the ring? And if they do, are there some suggestions that you have for them where if there could potentially be any conflict between the toy play and then being able to interact with the ball?
We both use toys.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess the precaution would be toys tend to generate more arousal than food. And if you have a high arousal dog, which if you're using toy reinforcer, you probably do, then that high arousal can cause a dog to kind of body slam into balls, run too hard, push too hard.
Bite.
Bite. I think a lot of that is communication, whereas running too fast, you could say that's the communication, but I think in a way
But they're definitely dogs
arousal
who,
control.
when they're over aroused,
just bite,
are quicker to bite
Yeah.
anything in front of them.
That's true. Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. If you're a toy person, we're big toy fans. So yeah, bring your toys. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we like to use the food more like a toy,
Yeah.
when we can, like we're throwing it around.
So can you talk about that really quickly? Because I know in the video you were showing it as far as how people can rethink about using their food to make it so it's more reinforcing. Because I've seen I think it's a pattern that's going on right now where people are almost like deep throating their dogs, trying to get them to eat the food. And the dog's like, oh, go away. I don't want that to begin with.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how you're making treats a little bit more exciting, or how you can encourage people to make treats exciting while the dog actually still really does want the treat?
Yeah. And while we talk about this, are you able to put videos on play but on mute?
Sure.
If you want to put on Minnow's first tri-ball lesson, I think I probably reinforce this way using lots of treat tosses and things like that. And so we can just watch if it's going on in the background. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. And we'll talk about using food in this more exciting way as more of a predatory thing. So yeah, I don't know why food use in dog training became so boring.
Yeah, so you're already throwing.
Yeah.
Here.
So here, all I'm asking is for the dog to engage with me. And once the dog engages with me, she's looking for the treat I threw. Once the dog engages with me, I'm going to mark and reinforce. And usually I'm going to reinforce by throwing away and letting the dog run back to me. I find this an incredibly fun engagement game. Like, so many people are so focused on keeping the dog with them that's like, why not actually practice the dog coming back to you? And there's this one, another treat toss. She's excited. She's running back for me to throw another treat. She's offering heel because we've been working on that. And so for here, I'm not going to reinforce that. I might move in a second. I might just wait her out. I don't remember what I did at this moment. I do a lot of different things there. I chose to move. She got better in front of me, so I throw. Using the treat in this way, so many of my students, we should mention this. So many people come to this class with treats cut so small, they can't throw them because the dog would never see them. They're crumbs. I hate that. I hate that. If it's not, okay, if you've got a Papillon, I get it. Okay. They're a small dog that can't eat a lot of food. But if you can't throw the food easily, then I would say it's not big enough to use as a reinforcer.
Yeah, it was a little harder here in the field because it can get lost in the grass.
But if it's big enough, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, and you can play with, of course, what color treat you're using.
Yes.
White treats out here would be easier to see.
I think I'm using cheese stick, which are a lot easier to see because they're bright white sitting in this grass. And get the dog moving, get the dog expressing themselves, get the dog expressing their, eating food is great. It's a primary drive. Absolutely. Dogs need to eat to survive. That's super valuable. But you're never going to get that enthusiasm that way unless you engage their prey drive, unless you engage their desire to run, to chase things, to catch things, to bite things. And you don't have to necessarily throw. You can run away from the dog and let the dog catch up to you and grab it from your hand. Be careful that you don't get bit. Like, if you use a toy, there's a risk of getting bit when you tug the dog. And if you, in my opinion, if you're using food right, you also are at more higher risk of being bitten. You have to learn better skills of how to deliver treats better. But yeah, your dog's going to be more aroused, more enthusiastic, which means they're going to use their teeth more.
So as you're doing this with the food, and so she chases after the food after she has balance with you, potentially you changing your body position. When she then orients correctly, are you also providing verbal praise for her? Is it like, "Woo, you're amazing," and then tossing the treat, or are you just using the treat to be the communication to her that that was correct?
Go ahead and unmute it for a second, and we can hear what I do.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a verbal marker there of yes. I think depending on the performance of the dog, I might go give extended praise. I might do different things depending on what attitude and energy I'm trying to get from the dog. Right now, I'm trying to get precision, which means I want to mark a very precise thing, and not kind of blur the lines by saying, "Wow, what a good dog, what a good puppy," and now I've like vomited reinforcement over a whole bunch of behaviors.
Man.
She also, as you can see, doesn't need
Come
a
by.
whole bunch more
Yes.
amping up, whereas another dog might.
Absolutely, yeah. Some dogs don't
Come by.
give us enough behavior to reinforce, and then yeah, we have to generate that behavior some way. So
Come
now
by.
we're doing the second skill, which is sending
Come
around,
by.
which is something
Yes.
we've worked on since puppyhood. It's just one of the base skills that I teach all my puppies.
Come by. Yeah.
And throwing the treat again. So this is a big, exciting slingshot activity for her.
Here. Come by. Yeah.
This is usually very easy for anybody who's done a sport before. They can do this.
Come by. Yeah.
And I was kind of experimenting on this first lesson, not knowing exactly what she would bring to the table to me. So we're playing around with a bunch of different exercises. The orientation she did at the beginning was way harder than I'd ask a normal student to do. But I was just seeing like, okay, how far can I push this with her never having done it before? Going back to some more orientation. We might do some orienting on the ball, which normally I won't allow my students to do on the first lesson. Normally it's the second or third lesson before I introduce it. Ooh.
You really want the dog to have some ideas about what they're supposed to do in relation to you before you add a third party for them to have fun interacting with.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
You can mute it or yeah.
Was there another video that you wanted to show?
Let's see. I think it might be useful to look at the one that says, "I think I have a tri-ball dog."
Okay.
I want to say that's her 10th lesson. So keep in mind, this is 10 videos. I have all 10. You just watched a portion of the first one. This is the 10th one. Okay. Training every day for 10 days. We might have skipped a day when I was tired or out of town, but it's 10 lessons. There was nothing shot off camera that you didn't see other than her nose work training and hunting training.
If you
So-
go and watch all the videos.
Yeah, so she's balancing now, orienting now across the ball from me at a good distance. And now, see, I kick the ball. She's not allowed to chase it. She has to run and stop it. That's an exercise that I call the most important tri-ball exercise. Is you go stop the ball from rolling away, not create the movement, but stop the movement. She's
And
in
there
the way.
you're
I wanna
tossing the
kick her.
treat at her while she's behind the ball. Is that treat placement important?
Yes, so I'm trying to reinforce that placement. Like, be there because that's where I'm going to throw the treat.
Yeah, don't come to me for your payment in this kind of exercise. Because the dogs will tend to run through the ball at you for the treat and then be knocking it all over the place.
So this is where all of that practicing of tossing the treat with the balancing is helpful.
Yeah.
So we can have the ability to do this at this stage.
I do have a lot of my students practice. Oh, and apparently I taught her to push today for the first time. I don't remember doing this, but yeah. So there is some basic pushing where I actually put the treat under the ball and the dog thinks there are treats under it. So they push the ball to get treats under it. Again, I don't teach pushing the ball as a targeting exercise where the dog believes that they are pushing the ball to get a treat, like with the marker system. I teach the dog that they are moving the ball out of their way to get a treat that's under it. So they're like pushing the ball out of the way, not pushing the ball to push the ball. And that really helps a lot in a lot of ways. One way is because it's not about the ball. And the other way is because it teaches them to get their nose low on the ball, which a lot of dogs get stuck kind of punching the ball in the middle with their nose. And the ball doesn't move as well when they do it that way. It's much more controlled by the
That's
body.
also why very small dogs can move surprisingly large balls, because their nose is in the right place way down there. And so they have a great, the physics are on their side for getting that ball moving.
Yeah,
A lot of people think their small dogs can't do it.
Yeah, no,
They
this
can.
is brilliant because again, all the things that you're talking about, I'm like, yep, I did that and I did that and I did that. And I had that problem and I had that problem and I had that other problem.
And you can see here, she understands she should push it and touch my. So this video is actually further down than I thought. So this isn't lesson 10. I think this is lesson 15. It's 5 more lessons than what I said. So it's not that much more, but it shows you how, like, okay, I think I introduced pushing on lesson 10. And now this is the amount of pushing I have 5 lessons later. So yeah, still using the treats very motivationally, lots of catching, lots of chasing. You can see the treats are big enough that you can see them on camera. I don't know what she's doing here. I think she's smelling something. So I reduced the distance for her. Yeah, it's a lot of fun and really easy.
Awesome. So if anyone is interested in potentially doing this, so they're like, okay, this is really awesome. And I am interested in potentially doing competition. And I think there are some people that I know, maybe in my training group, maybe at the training center that I work with. We have a little circle of friends that compete in other things. How can I potentially get involved? I want to do this in training and I also want to compete. How can I do something? Can I create a club? And if so, how would I go about doing that?
Absolutely. We want to help you guys who want to do this sport as much as we can. So get in contact with us. Join our Facebook group, RSG Tribal. It's in there in the chat. And like I said, contact us and tell us you want to get started, and we're going to help you out. We have those courses on Diana's website that she posted a link to as well. Take a look at those and organize a group. Go through the courses as a group, teach it, set yourself a goal to have a fun play day. Maybe don't even call it a competition, just a fun play day that dogs who have finished the program can come and try it out and organize it. You want to become a judge, we'll help you become a judge. We'll walk you through the process. I'll teach you of all of our requirements. It's very simple to become a judge. You got to pass the test with one of your dogs and then send us a sample video of you judging someone else to show that you basically know the rules. And then we're going to allow you to be a judge.
Yeah, and we can do all of this stuff virtually.
Yes.
So
we do have virtual competitions.
Yes, we've had quite a few of them. But we can also review judges' stuff virtually and all of that. So there's no, distance things to concern ourselves with. Wherever you are and wanting to do this, we can help you with it.
That's awesome. And I want to thank you both so much for putting this together because it is very exciting and it is so accessible. And I think, counteracting some of the perceptions of, well, now I need to go and buy a farm.
Yeah.
and I need to get where am I storing these 20 balls? And this is just so hard. So the fact that you could potentially practice this at home, you could practice this in your home, you could practice this in your backyard, you could work at this, at the training center when you're working with your friends on other types of training as well. It's accessible, it's fun. I think it does absolutely improve the relationship between yourself and your dog, and the way that it is so thoughtfully thought through as far as the training program that you put together, and then also the things you thought about when you put the program together for the competition side. That's all highlighting very important skills and things that we would need to improve across the board. Nothing exists inside of a vacuum. So if you were to do this with Tribal, you may very well see some improvements in other areas as well.
Definitely.
So was there anything else you guys wanted to talk about as far as Tribal is concerned, or your Push Tribal competition organization?
Do you have anything?
I don't know. I interjected lots of my thoughts in between things.
Yeah, I think we covered most of everything. It is really fun. Contact us if you're interested. We want to get you started.
True. Sorry. Pushing the wrong buttons. Terrible. Okay. I did want to just shout out for Barbara that she had let us know that the Tribal is very fun, that she's doing this with, she's seen it with a Papillon, with a Portuguese water dog and other non-herding breeds, and getting titles in the ATA organization, which is awesome. And that is very true, that we are able to do this, which is wonderful, with so many different types of dogs. And I think that's one of the come on, Santos, you can do this. You can do this with so many different types of dogs and so many different types of benefits, where it's not just a one-to-one. It's not, I need this kind of dog, I need this kind of space, I need this kind of training expertise, maybe this isn't for me. Honestly, this is something for everybody, and I think it'd be really super beneficial. So if you were maybe on the fence about it, maybe you had no idea what Tribal was, I hope that this helped you. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to write those inside the chat. We're going to be here for a little bit longer. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. Just really quickly, a plug about Pet Dog U is that we do have these 3 courses with Michael is offering for the Tribal program. You'd be able to enroll in any of those. We have 3 different enrollment options you'd be able to choose from: student, auditor, and watcher. So if you do enroll in one of those courses, you have continual access to it, so you can go through the material as often as you wish. And that's really helpful when you're looking at the video examples or you're going through the lesson material, so you can say, okay, I want to be able to see that again, that example, so I can figure out how I can do that actual exercise. Their Facebook group is really, really good, so you would have access to that too, and be able to see all that information as far as other people participating in Tribal as well. So just as we are wrapping up, what are your ultimate plans with Push Tribal? What are you hoping for 5 years, 10 years down the road as far as a competition organization? What are some of your big goals?
I'd love to get, there has never been a significant presence in in-person Tribal events. And there was a big push towards virtual, which is great. Like, the virtual push for dog training has been wonderful for all of us. Obviously, we're doing this live stream. It's all virtual. It's wonderful. We love it. But I think there's something still super important about the face-to-face competitions, the interaction, getting out there with your dog in the real world, and that socialization and kind of pressure, the stress we're giving to the dogs, that I think we're sometimes our dogs aren't being pushed enough. And so I'm a big proponent of using stress in a healthy way to build dogs' confidence, things like that. So I think I want to see in-person competitions in more available to people in different parts of the country. That would be the major goal for me.
Yeah, and that's why we want to bring on other judges, so that those can happen wherever people are. They can create that club, they can get a couple people to become judges, and they can do that together and, without a big barrier to entry.
Perfect. And so we did have a question. When does the next course open? So actually, you'll be able to enroll in any of the courses online at any time. We have a rolling enrollment for the auditor and the watcher options. If you wanted to be a student, where you'd be able to submit weekly homework for Michael to review and provide feedback on, that next student session starts on April 8th. So that basically just gives him a little bit of time where you'd be able to enroll, go through the material, and then there's a Facebook group you'd be able to post your homework to, and that allows him to then review that and then provide you with feedback. But if you were like, okay, I think I want to be able to go through the course at my own pace, and maybe I want to up my enrollment later, where I can submit maybe videos for Michael to review and provide feedback on, the watcher enrollment may be a really good option for you, because it basically you can go through it at your own pace. There's no kind of deadlines or anything like that. The auditor is a really nice intermediary, because what that means is that you have all the same access to all the materials, but then you can put together a compilation of a video. It has to be, I believe, 4 minutes in length total, of you tackling a couple of different exercises that Michael can then review by email and then get you that feedback that way. But really, to answer the question more directly, if you want to enroll as a student, the next session would start on April 8th. So really great question. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to write those inside the chat. So the other thing I wanted to ask both of you is, for Tribal with the games side, what are some of the skills that you're testing over with the game program for Push Tribal?
Natalie, you want to talk for a second while I pull up the
Sure.
list of games on our website?
Yes. So the games are basically different combinations of those 3 basic skills, the test skills. And so we came up with some things we thought were really fun that tested those from different directions and are expandable. So you can start at a basic level, and then it can get more and more difficult as you go up in the levels. So you want to talk about some specific ones?
Yeah, so right now we have 5 games, and we're always coming up with new games and wanting to add games. And if you come up with fun games that you guys develop, let us know, and we can add them to the roster of games that people can offer in their trials. So one game is called Speed Bowling. I described it earlier. There's all those bowling pins. Knock over as many as you can in 1 minute. And we have an inverse of that game, which we call Bulldog in a China Shop, where your dog has to push the ball through a minefield of bowling pins without knocking any of them over. So that can be really fun and can be very challenging. It's funny how when you're trying to knock them over, you can't. And when you're not trying to knock them over, you knock them all over. So yeah, it's funny how that can work. We also, probably one of our favorites is the obstacle course, where we're going to do all sorts of obstacles. They can be chutes. We can make little panels. We can do figure eights. We can do going up and over a small ramp of some sort.
Pushing
so we have
into a corner and out again.
Yeah, absolutely. All sorts of things under a table. It can be very fun, and they have to push it around a course, and it's time.
Yeah, and with that one, the way that it gets harder is we start with the lower number of obstacles, and then as it gets more advanced, there are more and more obstacles to complete during that course. But the handler can move around with the dog freely within that course, and so you can do a lot of that problem solving and communication together.
And it also gives a lot of freedom to the judge, because the judge is often creating the obstacles on the fly, based on what's around them, based on the layout, based on equipment they have. And at higher levels in particular, the judge may create off limits areas that the handler is not allowed to move in, which provides an extra challenge where you're going to have to figure out how to get the ball through an obstacle where the handler can't move into a specific space.
Yeah,
kind of like a gambler in agility.
Yeah, so we want it to be very creative for the judge, but also for clubs to be able to use a lot of basic objects that they probably already have. So again, there's not a big barrier to entry in terms of having to buy a whole bunch of equipment to be able to put on.
Yeah, if you have a nosework class and you have a bunch of chairs that you set in your research areas, you can make a course with just chairs.
Yeah, you can create a chute, you can create a corner.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then we had another question. Where would they be able to find in-person trials?
So right now, there aren't a lot of places where you can find them. There's groups that host trials of another venue in North Carolina, I think. There are some groups in California. Our group is in the St. Louis area.
And we are connected with a group in Southern California.
Yes. And so if you want to find in-person trials, contact us, join some of the Facebook groups, find people to train with, and probably you can be a hub where you're the one hosting these for people. So we would love to encourage you in any way that we can and help you. So let us know if you want to be a point person that we can help you in your area.
Perfect. All right, I want to thank you both so very much. This was excellent today. If you guys have any further questions about Triball or the Push Tribal organization, we will make certain that when we have this all completely published and on the sites and on our site, on our website and everywhere else, we'll have contact information for Michael and Natalie, as also so you'll be able to have the links for the Push Tribal competition organization. You're always more than welcome to contact them with any questions that you have. Definitely make certain you check out that RSG Tribal Facebook group. It's really good. And again, I want to thank you both so much for everything that you're doing to promote this really great, wonderful sport that I hope that more people can get involved in because it is so beneficial. Thank you guys so very much. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And I hope the two of you are able to rest a little bit. All right, guys, thanks so much and happy training. We look forward to seeing you soon.